Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Today we're reviewing this gentleman's video regarding Canelo's resume. Now, I have no idea who this person is, but the video randomly popped up and I was so astounded at the cluelessness, I had to quickly make a response to it. So, this guy doesn't sound like too much of a bad guy, not the typical Canelo fanboy douchebag. So, I'm going to try and not be too harsh on him and give him a fair go. A key reason why I'm making this video is because this guy's opinions are widely shared in the boxing world. So this is more of a general response, not just to this specific video. Okay, I instantly see a red flag. Ryan Garcia at A plus? That instantly tells me you don't know shit about boxing. That's some 50 IQ level shit right there. Secondly, you have far too many A level tiers, which makes it too hard to accurately class the fighters. Then the fighters you put in those tiers are all over the place. You have mediocre fighters as A level and good fighters as A plus plus. Overall, it's just a fucking mess. You need to completely simplify it. A plus, A, B plus, B, so on. Then you need to get some fucking glasses when you watch these fighters and reclassify them.
The first serious opponent of Canelo's career, in my opinion, was in 2010 versus Jose Cotto. Cotto had never fought at welterweight going into this fight, and this is a bit of a recurring theme when it comes to Canelo's resume. I think a weight class lower he would have been a B plus fighter, but since it's a different weight class, I'm going to put him in B, as Canelo would stop him in round 9.
33-year-old Jose Cotto, B level? That's a fucking joke. He was garbage in his prime. Never done anything, never beat anybody. C level at best. Next.
Then Canelo takes his first ever world title fight versus Matthew Hatton. Hatton was on a very respectable streak going into the fight, against opponents with good records, but Hatton wasn't actually a champion, it was a vacant title fight, so I can't rate him too highly. He's going to go in the B tier, as Canelo would then win the WBC super welterweight title.
Matthew Hatton, B tier? Again, a fighter who never beat anyone or did anything. To make matters worse, he was a 147 pounder. Canelo dragged up to 154 at a 150-pound catchweight, where he missed weight. Hatton was a bum. D tier. Holy shit.
Then Canelo takes on Kermit Cintron. Cintron was also a respectable opponent, went to a draw versus Sergio Martinez, but every time he fought above a certain level he got beat up. 2 times getting stopped by Antonio Margarito, beaten by Paul Williams, but he is respectable. I'm going to put him in B tier.
Cintron, he had only won 4 of his last 8 fights. He was way past it. C tier. Holy shit.
Takes on the first real proper well-known opponent on his record. Canelo took on Shane Mosley on the undercard of Mayweather versus Cotto. Now obviously you can say that Shane Mosley was old, which he was 40 years old, but he was always comfortable at 154 and he seemed competitive at the world level despite his age. But by 2012 when Canelo fought him, I think he was just about a B plus level fighter, so that makes Mosley the best opponent so far.
41-year-old Shane Mosley, B plus? Are you taking the fucking piss? 12 months after Canelo beat him, he was stopped in 6 rounds by Anthony Mundine. Mosley was a shot fighter when Canelo fought him. Holy shit.
Canelo then takes on the hardest opponent of his career so far, Austin Trout, 26-0, undefeated in his prime. Trout had a massive breakthrough win the previous year, beating Miguel Cotto convincingly. But considering his quality as a fighter overall, I'd put him in A tier. He's on the lower end of A tier, but he's there.
Trout, one of the premier overrated names on Canelo's resume, never won a real belt in his life. Lost to both Charlos in every step-up fight he ever had. His one claim to fame was beating an old Cotto. Nonetheless, he was a pretty good fighter, so that's a B-level win.
Then Canelo takes on Erislandy Lara, a very, very talented fighter, a future 2-division champion, coming off a clear win over Austin Trout and his single loss being a massive robbery versus Paul Williams. Lara was clearly Canelo's best opponent at this point besides Floyd, and the fight reflects that. It was very close and competitive. I think since Lara was in his prime at this point, I think it's fair to put him as an A++ fighter, as an elite level win.
Lara, maybe the most overrated fighter on Canelo's resume. All we keep hearing about is Lara, like he beat the second coming of Floyd. Now, who did he really beat? He beat someone at the time who was 19, 1, and 2. and had never been world champion. In fact, to this day, Lara has never won a real belt in the ring. All his titles have been regular belts, which were later upgraded. And his run at middleweight, where he beat the likes of Lamana, Zarafa, and a totally shot Garcia, is literally a farce. The only good win he ever had was over Trout, B level.
Then Canelo takes on James Kirkland, a hard-hitting puncher. He was coming off a win over a 20-0 Glenn Tapia. No serious accomplishments, but he was a serious puncher, who I would put in B tier. Canelo went to war with him and put him to sleep.
James Kirkland, B level? Fuck off. Never beat anyone or did anything. Just an arm-punching brawler who came off nearly a 2-year layoff to fight Canelo. C level at best.
Canelo then moves up to middleweight and takes on the legend Miguel Cotto. But I can't give him too much credit, just like Shane Mosley, because Cotto was at the end of his career taking lots of damage in the process. I do think that Austin Trout loss was a bit of an off night, so I'm going to put him in A tier because he was in good form. Which is
Cotto, 35 years old, past his prime. And Canelo fought him at Canelo weight, where he weight bullied the fuck out of him and dwarfed him on fight night. Cotto was past it, but not shot. B level.
It's going to take us to a bit of a mismatch, Amir Khan. Canelo does sometimes have a history of facing smaller guys, but I don't think it's ever as egregious as the time he faced Khan. And obviously the fight ended as expected. Despite how good Khan was in lower divisions, I think because of the size mismatch, I'm going to put Khan all the way down in B tier.
Khan, B tier? Sorry, but when you drag up a chinny guy 2 divisions, you can't give him that much credit. In the context of the win, this was C tier.
Canelo then went back down to 154 to face Liam Smith. Liam Smith was the undefeated defending world champion at the time. He was good, but I'm going to put him in B+.
Liam Smith, B+? Another absolute joke. Smith was just a typical mediocre UK cream puff. C+.
Canelo then faces Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. This was a gimmick fight at the time. I'm going to put Chavez down at B tier.
Chavez Jr., B tier? Fuck off. C tier, being generous. Holy shit.
Canelo then moves up to 168, takes a tune-up fight versus Rocky Fielding. Fielding was decent, he'd beaten John Ryder before Ryder entered his second prime, but he did also get demolished by Callum Smith inside a single round. The Canelo fight itself was also one-sided. I think he's a C-tier opponent.
The words decent and Rocky Fielding don't go together. Rocky Fielding was a total bum.
Canelo then takes another major test in Danny Jacobs. Jacobs was the next best middleweight for years behind Triple G and Canelo himself. He gave Triple G his hardest fight before Canelo did, and if you look at the Canelo fight outside those certain moments where Canelo slips all those punches, it was actually quite a competitive fight. However, Jacobs didn't do too much outside of facing Triple G and Canelo. He was never actually a full world champion until he faced Sergey Derevyanchenko for the vacant IBF middleweight belt, so I'm not sure I'm going to put him in A++ next to Lara. Not only is Lara more accomplished, I think he's a better fighter overall, so I'm going to put Jacobs in A+, but this is Canelo's third best name to this.
Danny Jacobs. Well, if we ignore the fact that he was a recovered cancer patient who had chemotherapy, this was one of Canelo's best wins over a prime quality opponent. Jacobs was good, but not that good. B+.
Point. Then Canelo jumps up 2 divisions to face Sergey Kovalev. Now this is a bit of a tricky one. On one hand, Kovalev is one of the best light heavyweights of the decade, and Canelo's jumping up 2 divisions to face him. But at the same time, Kovalev by that point had already been knocked out by Eleider Alvarez, and he was given a very quick 3-month turnaround after going 10 rounds with Anthony Yarde. So there are a couple drawbacks to the win. I think I'll put him in A+ next to Jacobs. It wasn't too insane of a win considering that Canelo had already fought at 168, but Kovalev was the defending champion and there was a serious noticeable size difference anyway, so I think A+ is about right.
Kovalev A+? Are you taking the piss again? Not only did he only have a 9-week camp, he only had 9 weeks between fights, where he was almost knocked out by Anthony Yarde. Plus he was 36 years old. In case you didn't notice, Kovalev was a handicapped shot fighter. So having him at A+ is obviously laughable. C+.
Then Canelo takes on yet another defending champion, starting his super middleweight campaign versus Callum Smith. Smith had the WBA title and it was fought for the vacant WBC title as well. Callum Smith had just won the hardest tournament in the sport, the World Boxing Super Series Canelo fight. Obviously, that didn't stop British pundits from doing what British pundits do, which is predict the British fighter to win every fight. So there were some people picking Smith to win the fight. Canelo did beat him convincingly. Smith overall was quite a good opponent. He was big for the division, partly because of the size difference. I think he's an A-tier win, about the same as Austin Trout.
Callum Smith A-level? Hilarious. His best win was over a shot George Groves, and he needed a robbery to get past John Ryder. Just let that sink in. Callum Smith is another overrated, mediocre cream puff. C tier.
Canelo takes on, in my opinion, the best of the three super middleweight champions. Billy Joe Saunders, 30-0 two-division champion. As good as that may sound though, Saunders doesn't have much quality on his resume. His best win is between Chris Eubank Jr. and John Ryder, both fights being quite close. But regardless, Saunders was a very skilled, very talented opponent, and Canelo broke his face, in my opinion, the best performance of his career. I think he's an A-tier win, on the verge of being A+, but not quite. Then
Billy Joe Saunders, an A-tier win? Billy Joe Saunders, the best champion? He beat at 168? What the fuck? He only ever had 3 fights at 168, and they were all bums. He was not even a legitimate super middleweight. Even at 160, he was nothing special. He was good, but nothing more. Caleb Plant is better than Saunders in every possible way as a fighter. Technically, physically, he's superior to Billy Joe Saunders. Now, considering Billy Joe Saunders was not even a legit super middleweight, this was another C-level win.
Canelo finally goes for undisputed versus Caleb Plant. Caleb Plant was an undefeated champion for a couple of years before this fight, his biggest win being versus Jose Euskategui. To me, he's a bit better than Callum Smith, but a bit worse than Saunders. He's also going in A-tier.
Now, Caleb Plant is one of Canelo's best wins because, believe it or not, he was one of the few prime fighters Canelo ever beat. B+.
Now Canelo steps back down to face Triple G again in a trilogy, this time pulling Triple G up to 168. At this point there were serious signs of Triple G slowing down, as seen versus Dravianchenko and Ryoto Murata. The fight would reflect that being the worst and the most one-sided of the trilogy. Golovkin in the second fight was a Triple A win, but by this point I think Golovkin's been put to a simple A-tier win, alongside the other guys at 168.
A 40-year-old Triple G fighting at super middleweight for the first time in his career? An A-level win? Fuck off. B- being super duper generous.
Fight versus John Ryder. I don't think Ryder's record really reflects how good he was. A bit similar to Marcos Maidana, obviously at a lower level. After his loss to Rocky Fielding in 2017, he switched trainers and started performing a lot better. He arguably got robbed versus Callum Smith, then got a win over Danny Jacobs, which to be fair was also debatable. I'm not going to say he's an A-tier win, but he's not a bad win by any means. I'm going to put him in B+.
B+? Now you're literally just saying shit. You're literally saying anything. The guy who lost to Rocky Fielding, plus numerous other losses, and not even good enough to win a regional British belt, he's a classic UK journeyman. And Munguia exposed him for what he was, a complete bum, and completely ran through him and knocked him out, something which Canelo couldn't do, funnily enough. And instead, he had a tough 12-round fight versus John Ryder. C-level, at best.
Charlo, who's 2 divisions below him. Charlo was undisputed at 154, but obviously that's 2 divisions below Canelo, and the fight would reflect that, as Canelo bullied Charlo around the ring. I also don't think Charlo reflects the quality of other undisputed champions in this era, so for that reason he's only a B+ win.
Charlo came off the couch after 18 months and was dragged up 2 divisions. He would not beat anybody decent at 168. In that context, it was a C-level win.
Munguia was actually on quite good form at this point. He was a former champion at 154, was undefeated coming off wins over Sergey Derevyanchenko and a knockout win over John Ryder, and he did give Canelo quite a good fight. I'm going to put him in B+.
Munguia, or Bumguia, has been mediocre his whole career, ducked everybody and got knocked out by a French cab driver in his very next fight after Canelo. Munguia fucking sucks. C+.
This fight's a bit difficult to defend. There were much better options besides Berlanga at 168. Pacheco and Billy, Morel. I thought he should have lost to Steve Rolls and Angulo, and the fact that Canelo didn't stop him is a bit concerning. But because of the size and the fact that Berlanga can punch, I think B tier is about right.
Berlanga, B tier. I mean, really? He never beat a top 10 fighter in his life and struggled to beat journeymen like Steve Rolls. He needed to rob him to get past him. Berlanga is a bum. C level. The reality of Canelo's career and resume is that it's full of smoke and mirrors. Despite all the names and champions, most people fail to recognize that his best wins were against opponents 35 years plus. Faded or shot champions with name value when Canelo fought them, rehydration clauses, or funky weight divisions. Ask yourself, who were the best prime fighters Canelo ever beat? Plant? Jacobs? That's it. The biggest names on his resume, Floyd, Cotto, Mosley, Kovalev, Triple G, were all over 35 years of age. That's even before we get to the rehydration clauses and Canelo weight division. Overall, he has an overrated resume that looks great on the surface, but when you scratch the surface, it's nowhere near as good as it appears, which is why Canelo's been managed so expertly and moved like a vulture his whole career, and why he's become so overrated. Whenever he stepped up to top tier opponents, he either barely beat them or he got dominated. So, buddy, let me give you some friendly advice. In the future, I recommend recalibrating your boxing brain and simplifying your ranking system because, as I have shown you, you have wildly overrated Canelo's career along with a bunch of other fighters. And you need to stop overrating these UK bums. They're not that good, and they're actually quite mediocre, regardless if they have name value, regardless if they've been promoted so well that a lot of people think they're actually high level, great fighters. They're not. Mediocre at best. And that's why Canelo couldn't get enough of them. He loved beating up on UK fighters. He loved beating up on UK fighters and he loved taking belts from UK fighters because half of the champions he beat were UK fighters. Easy work, and Canelo knew it all along. And he's not done yet because little old Eubank Jr., he's next on the list. Enjoy. As for the other highlights on his resume, Floyd was A plus and whipped Canelo's ass. Bivol, A class, and whipped Canelo's ass. Triple G was A class, but Canelo did not clearly beat him until he was 40 years old. And that's it. Was Canelo ever really a great fighter? No. Was he a pretty good fighter masquerading as a great fighter? Yes. Just like he has a pretty good resume, which is masquerading as a great resume.